and say thank you very much for doing this, Katie. I really appreciate it. And you know what? I had a perfect example of not, well, maybe perfect example. I did a virtual Thanksgiving. I had, which on one hand, you know, it's like, wah, wah, poor me. I wasn't with my family. But on the other hand, I was with family this weekend that I normally wouldn't be, like my cousin in Hawaii. But what all of that boils down to, I should have actually had you last week so that I would know how to
know how to do all of these cool
yes.
things. So yes, we also did some virtual Thanksgiving. We made pies as a family virtually because pie making is our big tradition for Thanksgiving morning. And so we did that virtually in the morning with my two nieces and my parents and my sister. So that was fun. And then we played virtual trivia in the afternoon. So I was hoping to take a full Zoom break for 4 days and then realized, well, that meant I didn't get to see the family at all. So I took a Thursday Zoom. I put in Zoom on Thursday, but the rest of the weekend I vowed I would not turn it on for anything.
Good for you.
Which unfortunately Friday night, we had friends that had a virtual happy hour on Friday, and they were people from across the country I would have loved to see, but I just told my husband, I'm like, I can't do it. I can't do one more day.
Because you really do get Zoom burnout, don't you?
Yeah, you do. And you have to be really cautious to just balance things out and you know, especially the conversations I struggle with a little bit more when it's the visiting. There's too many things. I keep threatening my family I'm going to put them in breakout rooms, but they're not real happy about that idea. So.
Well, and that kind of brings me, I know that you, I really will give you an opportunity to talk, but that kind of brings me, is there Zoom etiquette with regard to introducing people? Because like my cousins on the West Coast didn't know my friends here in St. Louis, and my family is really weird. So some of my family isn't related to my other family. And somebody would say, so how do you know each other? Which made me wonder, is there Zoom etiquette? And now I really will let you talk.
Yeah, no, there actually is, and it actually applies to meetings as well. So there is some Zoom etiquette around introductions, and depending on how many people you have, there's some easy ways to do it. One is if you have a smaller group like this, simply going around the room and having an icebreaker ready to go, whatever that conversation is, and going around the room, calling on each person and saying, like asking them to introduce themselves. So that works really well. So people aren't trying to talk over each other. You're managing, people get frustrated in Zoom if they're not sure if they're the ones that are supposed to talk or not. And so if you can, as a facilitator, kind of guide that conversation a little bit. The other alternative, and I've done this with a couple of networking events. My business fraternity did this as a networking event one evening. They actually had questions set up, and then they used those breakout rooms that we're going to show today they would ask the general question, and then they would send people to the breakout room. They always had a way to figure out who was going to be the leader in your breakout room. So the person with the birthday closest to September 29th was the leader for that particular breakout session. And so when you got into a breakout session, there was always one person who knew they were supposed to kind of, okay, here's the question we're supposed to discuss. And they would always start with, why don't we go around in the breakout room and everybody introduce themselves. And so as long as you have some fun way to get people to share, like you said, how does everybody here know Lisa, would be a great conversation for folks. So that way you do, because it's awkward to sit and watch people on a screen and not know who the other folks are. The other piece of etiquette, which as actually we'll talk about as part of the presentation, always making sure that you ask people at the beginning of the call to actually change their name in their box so that you can so you know what people's names are. Because oftentimes people are using their kids' iPads or their spouse's, computer, and you're looking going, there's no way that's not Joey, and you can't figure out who people are. And so just asking people to rename themselves can make a big difference. And you can do fun things with the renaming as well, like make them, what was your nickname growing up? And then they can put like their first name in their nickname or whatever it happens to be to kind of keep it engaging.
That could be fun, or like cousin Fred or friend
Yeah.
from, yeah,
Third
down the
cousin,
street.
third time
Yeah,
removed.
And Katie,
exactly.
you're going to tell us how to change our name, right? Because I don't know how to do it.
I am. So absolutely. In fact, why don't we, so first of all, thank you all for joining this morning, particularly early, early morning breakfast with the expert is always fun. I appreciate when people get up and have their coffee ready to go this early in the morning. So what I'd love to do is take some time to share with you some of the best practices that we've learned from Zoom and just some tricks that we're finding folks, even though you feel like you're on Zoom all the time, you may not necessarily know some of the ins and outs that will help you make your meetings more engaging and more successful. So we'll go through each of them. And as we talk, I'll demonstrate them, but I will also walk you through, here's the steps on how to do them so that it's easy for you to follow up afterwards. So for those of you who I've not met, I know a lot of folks on the screen this morning, but for anyone that I've not met, my name is Katie. I am the owner of People Solutions Center, which is an HR consulting firm here in the St. Louis market. There's two reasons that I know Zoom inside and out. First of all, I literally since March feel like my head has been attached to a Zoom call, and all of my client meetings have gone virtual, including full client trainings. So we have clients going through 3 and 4 hour workshops virtually, and we are finding there's a couple that I prefer virtual. I'm finding I'm getting more engagement, not less. Some of the reason behind that, and Amy, this kind of goes to your world, what I'm finding is on anything even remotely related to vulnerability. So things like DEI or even personal styles where you're asking somebody to be a little bit vulnerable, being in the safety of your own bedroom, couch, whatever, helps people feel safe enough to then, if you use all the right tools in Zoom, to feel open enough to share. And so there's actually a couple of sessions I'm finding I get better results virtually than I did in person. Some of the other things that we're doing virtually with clients are focus groups. And I will say back in March, when all this all happened, clients were like, oh, we've got to cancel our focus groups. Nobody will talk virtually. I'm getting better results through focus groups because again, it's that safety feeling. You have to do them right. You can't just get on and be like, so what does everybody think? Because you won't get anybody to answer you. But there's some tricks that we're going to share today that give you an opportunity to really figure out how do I get people engaged enough and comfortable enough that they will get over that. Now, some of the things that, and Lisa, you were talking about, like what's the etiquette? I was laughing. My dad and my sister Thursday night we were 3 hours of pie baking and everybody talking over each other. And my sister said, well, Katie, what is the etiquette? Like, am I supposed to say something and wait 3 seconds before to let somebody else talk? Like, how do you keep from talking over each other? And I had to laugh because my family has never not talked over each other my entire life. So why we care when we're in Zoom world was a little ironic, but some folks do feel like they're interrupting a little bit more. And some of that is just setting expectation up front. We're going to interrupt each other. And that's okay, because that means we're engaging in conversation. And that means, it's going to get clunky sometimes, but you know what? Sometimes we're clunky when we're in person too. So letting people know it's going to happen and just being comfortable with it and knowing that it's more important that people be engaged than that we once in a while have awkwardness where we all talk at the same time. But being a good facilitator is key. So you have a role or assign roles to other folks to say, you know what, Kathy's going to lead the introductions this time and she's going to walk us through. Using other people in the call is a really big piece when you're doing Zoom. So with that, I'm going to share my screen here for a couple of moments just to give you all some information and anyone who wants these slides, I can share them with you afterwards. I'm always a huge proponent of share your material because it will help people in the future. So I'm going to do some slide sharing. Hopefully the share screen piece is something that all of you have done it's probably the most common thing we've done in Zoom. The one key piece I will say is don't forget to think about using videos in your presentations, even if you're sharing screens. The piece you need to know in Zoom is if you're sharing anything that has audio in it, when you open your share screen box, it shows all those pictures of the different things you can share. And down in the bottom left-hand corner, there's 2 boxes. And one of those boxes asks if you want to share the audio from anything that you're sharing. You always want to make sure you've clicked that so that when you show a video, the people on the other side can actually hear it as well. So those little magic boxes, you ignore them until you start looking for them, and then you drive yourself crazy. But they're on the left-hand side when you go to share screen, and it gives you everything that you need to be able to do video. That one is probably the easiest trick to learn, but often gets forgotten. So today we're going to walk through some best practices, some tips for engaging others, and then I am going to do some demo items for you so you get a chance to see some of these things. So as we get started, let me go in. I'm going to start this morning with a poll. For those of you, and here's the lovely thing. So we do a lot with technology where you have to, click on reactions and everything else. Here's something we've forgotten. This still works in Zoom. So it's amazing to me the number of times I've had a facilitator, they're like, now here's how you show your reaction and you do this, and they're spending all this time explaining technology. And I go like this and they're like, oh yeah, raising your hand still works. So quick show of hands, how many of you have used polling in Zoom? Little bit. All right. So I'm going to walk you through an example of a poll. I'm going to launch our first poll. Polling is a really neat option when you're working with participants. I always tell folks, I can see the cumulative answers. I can't tell how any one individual person answered. That also gives people safety in, I can give my real opinion without feeling like I'm going to look stupid or be the only person out on a limb. This is a tool I use a ton in focus groups. I also use it quite a bit in just general workshops because it gives people an opportunity to give me their thoughts and opinions, and then I can kind of guide my conversation. So I've launched the poll, and each of you should have received a box that came up on your screen that asked you the question, I believe all meetings can be managed virtually if done correctly. And if you go ahead and answer that question, once the poll is complete, I can end the poll and I can share the results with the participants. So you all can see where you fell in comparison to everyone else on the call. Again, you can't tell who answered which way, but you certainly can see kind of where you fell in the range. The reason this particular tool, especially in focus groups or just even regular day-to-day meetings, this is the conversation starter. So when I'm doing focus groups for clients, for example, I will put up a question of, I enjoy the work environment, and I'll just throw it up there. I had a call last week, we had 12 people on a focus group. I had a couple who were like, I did not plan on saying anything here. I really just came to listen to see if everybody else would be honest. And I was like, well, that was a little, that was brutally honest, but helpful. So, but we put up the first poll, and when people know that I can't tell who answered, they'll answer pretty honestly. And then they see, oh, well, wait a second, I'm not the only one that disagreed with that. I enjoy the work environment. Then when I ask the question, so tell me what you like and what you don't like, people are far more likely to chime in because they don't feel like they're the only one feeling the way that they feel. Same thing goes when you're doing workshops. If you're teaching something new where people might be hesitant to raise their hand and say, I don't have a clue what you're talking about, you can put up polls that say, have you ever tried X? Yes or no, strongly disagree, however you want to word it. But those are easy ways to get people engaged. The polling option is one of those items that if you're using the free version of Zoom, polling doesn't work. So you do need these slightly upgraded, but you do not, it's still really inexpensive in the scheme of things. And if you're doing, Zoom is one of the first things I will tell you, you get what you pay for. So if you were paying nothing, you don't get to do very much in Zoom. It is worth the extra expense if you are spending any kind of time on Zoom. Even just facilitating team meetings, you're going to get a lot better outcomes if you pay for the upgraded version, because all of these tools that I'm about to show you are going to work. You want to set up your polls in advance of the meeting, which does the one thing that we all know we should do, but we don't. You have to plan. It's hard to do polls in Zoom on the fly. So you need to spend some time thinking about, what am I going to say? Where do I want the team engaged? The other place, though, that can be really helpful in team meetings is even just putting up, as you're talking about, like if you're trying to do a process review or something like that, putting up a few polls along the way to get the team's kind of juices flowing, get people engaged, because process conversations aren't always exciting and sexy. So we want people to be engaged as we go through things. The polling piece is probably, I would say, at least half of my meetings, I'm using some sort of poll in order to get people engaged. And you really can have a couple out there that are your standard go-to, that no matter what's happening in a meeting, things are getting kind of slow, nobody's paying attention, like throw up that poll and see if you can get people back on track. It's a really helpful tool from that perspective. A couple of other items to know. These are just best practices when you're learning and doing a lot in Zoom. First and foremost, make someone else a co-host. There is nothing worse than being the host of a meeting and you get knocked off your internet. And now suddenly everybody else goes away. If I make Amy my co-host, then if I get knocked off, Amy becomes the default host. So that way your whole meeting doesn't come to an end, you get knocked off, but you can come back in. The way to make somebody a co-host is simply if you scroll over somebody's video box, so their picture, in the upper right-hand corner, you're going to see 3 dots. When you see those dots, if you're the host of the meeting, when you click on those dots, one of the options is to make co-host. I don't do any meeting where I don't have a co-host. And in fact, the one meeting I almost did because I got distracted because I almost forgot to record. About 5 minutes in, I got knocked off the call and we had 150 people on the Zoom line. And I was supposed to be the MC for the call. And had I gotten knocked off, I would have had 150 people who all had to dial back in. So word for the wise, it was one of those panic moments where I was like, oh, thank God I did not forget that at the last second. So always make sure you have a co-host. The other trick that I do when it's a meeting that's really critical, like if you got knocked off, it would be problematic, is I will actually connect my computer to the landline. So I have a client training later this morning. It's 3 hours long. I'm a paid facilitator. You don't want to be the person whose internet went down in the middle of that. So I actually have a landline connection, a cord that goes directly into my into the wall, and I can connect. That keeps anything, no matter what else goes wrong in my house, I will still have, I'm sure there's something that could go wrong that would cause me to lose that, but it would have to be pretty significant. So that's another trick if you are the leader, to make sure that you don't end up losing people along the way, because that's always our worst nightmare when we're trying to facilitate things. We talked about asking participants to add their full names. That is really helpful. So let's walk through how you do that. Again, if you scroll over somebody's picture or your own picture, you'll notice up in the right-hand corner, those 3 dots. Those are the 3 magical dots. Almost everything you are trying to do in Zoom can be done from those 3 dots. So if you click on those 3 dots, one of your options is to rename. When you click rename, then you can type in your name. So for example, if I wanted to be, I can't even come up with something entertaining this morning. So somebody remind me to change this back so it doesn't look weird when I get on that client call later. That's why I didn't put like Mickey Mouse or something, because I'm sure my clients would be like, what? But you can simply change what's in there and help people. The other thing you can do as a viewer, and this just can kind of help you engage, especially if you have a lot of people on the screen. If you click those 3 dots and then click the option to pin someone, it means no matter who is talking, that person is going to show on your screen. So sometimes if it matters to me that, like, as the speaker, I want to make sure if you're on an iPad, you're always seeing me, the speaker, I will ask participants to pin me so that regardless of who else starts to talk, it doesn't matter on a laptop, but if they're on an iPad, that's a pretty helpful tool. That way they're always watching whoever you need them to be paying attention to. And then my favorite one, you can do hide self view. I don't usually tell people that because it's really like people should just have to watch themselves talk, but you can do a hide self view so that you don't have to watch yourself if you don't want to. Again, those 3 magic dots do a ton for you. Play around with them. You'll get a lot of new information there. The next piece that I want to share in terms of Zoom piece is don't use your microwave. This is a really weird, odd fact, but if your microwave is on the same frequency as your Wi-Fi, which I have no idea how you tell if that's the case, other than if you are on a Zoom call using your video and somebody runs the microwave at the same time, it will kick you off. So if you have an important call and you do not want to get kicked off, one, either figure out the frequencies of your microwave and your Zoom and your Wi-Fi and do them differently, or two, have like I have in my house. We did actually finally last week fix the microwave problem, but since March, we have had a Post-it note on the microwave that I have to use when I have certain times. Like this morning, I would have to put it up and say, do not microwave between this time and this time. So those are good things to know, just to keep yourself from kind of getting knocked around, getting knocked off of important conversations. A couple of other just really good practices to get in the habit of. One, in terms of increasing engagement, is what I refer to as the 5-minute rule. We as human beings are really struggling right now with Zoom fatigue anyway. And anytime that you are looking at the same screen for longer than 5 minutes, you are likely to zone out. So in Zoom world, when you're trying to increase engagement, you want to make sure that you every 5 minutes do something to change it up. That could be leverage a poll. That could be as simple as stop sharing your screen. So you've noticed today that I flipped back and forth, right? Where you see the screen for a little bit and then you get to see everybody else. It's really hard to sit for 45 minutes or an hour and just watch that person's screen go. Now, there's some sessions where we can't help it, right? There's 200 people on a call. I'm the facilitator. Like, we just have to do what we have to do. But when I'm doing workshops or team meetings, I make sure that we're going back and forth so that when people don't need to see my screen anymore, turn it off. That way everybody can see each other. I can see people because I know as a facilitator, I'm way more engaged when I get to see all of you than if I'm just talking and nobody is looking at me. That's why I make Kathy come on and I tell her to be early so that she ends up at the top. So if I have to have the screen, I have somebody who smiles at me during the whole session. So good tricks to learn along the way if you have to do webinars. The other piece that you can use, again, this is a perfect opportunity. Every 5 minutes or so, have a poll ready to go. Have individuals use the breakout rooms. We're going to share those as well. How many of you have used breakout rooms before? Ooh, I've got a couple of folks. So we're going to do a quick exercise with breakout rooms just so that everybody can understand the experience. This is another tool. It is phenomenal. And you absolutely, if you are doing any sort of volume of Zoom meetings, you should have breakout rooms. If you're the facilitator, it's worth paying for the upgrade in Zoom. To do breakout rooms, if your line is set up for it, there's simply an icon at the bottom of your screen called breakout rooms. When you open that, you have the option to assign people automatically to breakout rooms. If you're really doing a structured class and you need to, you can assign these in advance. You can actually let participants pick their own rooms. I haven't tested that one nearly as much. That's a fairly new option. It can work if you've got like particular, say you're doing roundtable discussions, you could probably let people opt in. I haven't used it yet, but it's on my list to sort of test out. Essentially what happens, you get to pick the number of breakout rooms you want, and then I hit create. Once I open the breakout rooms on this end, each of you will get a box that asks you to join. I call this the Star Trek moment in Zoom because you literally get teleported into your own Zoom breakout room where you can have conversations. So I'm going to teleport you here for a moment to your breakout room. Take just a minute to share your favorite tool within Zoom, within your group, and then I'll bring you all back in just a minute.
my chance to share went to, or to go into a breakout room, Katie
I
left.
think I waited too long.
Oh, okay. I'll open them again. Here we go. Thank you, Amy.
Okay. Don't forget to change your name back.
All
From
right.
the
Oh, thank you. I love when my participants make sure I don't screw things up. So thank you. So again, that breakout room works really well. I will, this can be really helpful in even team meetings. And I think we get used to thinking about this in workshop settings. We forget how easy it is to engage with our teams this way. Anytime you've got a meeting with your team that's more than, gosh, certainly if you're going more than an hour, but even a half hour, try to find ways to break people out for even short discussions. Your introverts in the room will love you for this, particularly if you send them the questions in advance so that they know and they can think about what they want to share and what they think is important. But about 6 people on a screen, I'm finding is the most people can handle before the introverts start to be like, I'll just wait and give everybody else a chance. Which also one of my best tricks when I remember to do it is make sure, even when you're facilitating in person, we always have to make sure we leave room for those who are prefer to sort of think inside their head before they just blurt out answers, which is a golden ticket that I've never learned in my life. But for those of you who are really good at it, typically in person, I have to count about 5 Mississippis before you will give your answer. In Zoom world, you have to increase that to about 7 or 8 Mississippis. So literally, I will stand here and count 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippis. And if I've got a group of introverts, or if I'm finding only my extroverts are answering, you still have to go back and recount, because otherwise you will find that your introverts will assume, well, it probably wasn't that important to share. So a couple of things to just keep in mind. It's even more crucial in Zoom world. And if you are finding you've got more than 6 people, put people in breakout rooms and then ask them to come back and debrief. That will make sure that people are engaging. If you've not facilitated with the breakout rooms, know that you can join. If you're the host, you can join the various rooms and listen to the conversations to make sure they're on track. I usually give people about 30 seconds once I've put them into a room, and then I start hopping around to the room. One of the reasons to do that is once you put people in a room, they go, what were we supposed to do again? So you want to join in fairly early and make sure they're clear on instructions, and then hop around and make sure you're hearing some of the conversation so you can pull out nuggets when people come back to the groups. The last thing I want to show, and I know we're at the top of the hour, but this is a really cool option for you. If you're facilitating longer meetings and you need people to have fun and be engaged, there is an additional tool out there called Kahoot. And if you have not used Kahoot, you need to pull this up. It is a really great way to make things fun. I'm actually going to share a Kahoot with you If you have a phone and you have a second, go ahead, follow the instructions on the screen. So if you go to your phone or your iPad, some additional option, go to kahoot.it and enter the PIN number on the screen. This allows players to join an interactive session. The cool part about Kahoot is you can build in all sorts of polls and then just polls, questions, quizzes. I've done a trivia night on this. You have lots of different ways to do this. And then participants, you can share slides in addition. So there's ways to set up your slides in the Kahoot so that everything is in one place. Then you just share it through Zoom. And now you have a fun interactive way for individuals to participate as we go. So I'm going to give a quick example. I'll go ahead and start the Kahoot. And it's going to bring up a poll. The first poll that we wrote is, does the Statue of Liberty, oops, sorry, I clicked on the wrong thing. Does the Statue of Liberty hold the torch in her right or left hand? You can set timers in Kahoot. So I can give, if it's a longer question, I can give people, I think you can give people up to like 2 minutes to answer the question. If it's shorter, you can have it as short as 20 seconds. That way there's not a lot of lag time. Again, it takes some prep, but it's a great way to get people engaged. So we are completely split on which hand the Statue of Liberty holds the torch. She actually holds it in her right hand. So, but you can see where, like, even if you're just, you know, maybe your topic has nothing to do with the Statue of Liberty, but it's a fun way to get people engaged. Then you can also do, I have a class that I lead on Tuesday nights. We're actually having participants create quizzes that they send us in advance and then we set up. I can then add my slides right into the Kahoot. So I operate everything from one screen. My polling options still work. And then you can do things, you can do a true or false question. So true or false, your microwave can throw off your Zoom connection. And hopefully we now know, probably would have gotten different results on this one had I not said that earlier. And this is a little known fact about Zoom. So you can also do, and Amy, this one's in here just for you. I don't know if you have used Kahoot or not, but this word cloud option works great if you're trying to get people to engage. So we'll go ahead and answer this. Name one thing you'll do differently to increase engagement on your next virtual meeting. Go ahead and type in a short form answer. What it's going to do is take those answers and actually create a word cloud for me, which then allows me as a facilitator to engage people in broader conversations. This is another way. I've seen a lot of facilitators use chat as like a way for people to enter information. And then as the facilitator, it works well because people can see it. But facilitating, you're trying to read all these chat things and it's really tough. This instead gives you the option for people to answer information. And now you see word clouds automatically generated for you that give you those kinds of answers. So Kahoot is another way to just enhance what you're doing in Zoom. Again, not super expensive. It's a nice add-on if you're doing any kind of workshops or you've got an all-day or a half-day team meeting. Throw in Kahoot and mix it up, have some fun trivia questions, it'll keep score for you. So if you use quizzes, it'll actually score it for you and you can play in teams or individually. I've used Kahoot as a way to do fun way to roll out an employee handbook because nobody actually likes to read their handbook, but if they know there's prizes, they will. So there's a lot of fun ways for us to mix things up, but it's another tool that's really helpful for you. Hopefully all of this kind of gives you an idea as to how to make your meetings more engaging. Again, all of it means we have to do one thing that we should have been doing all along, but now it becomes even more important, and that's plan. We have to think through our meetings. We can't just show up and wing it anymore. We probably shouldn't have been, actually not probably, we shouldn't have been winging it before. it's really, really critical now that we don't. And our participants will get so much more out of it when we do these kinds of things. So I am happy for anyone who would like to. I've got my contact information here for you. If you'd like copies of the slides or you have any questions, do not hesitate to send us information. Email me over. We'll get you those slides right away. If there's something, again, most of Zoom is pretty self-explanatory, but if there's something you haven't been able to figure out and you need help, just shoot me an email. I'm happy to hop on and have you walk through. The other piece that I do a lot is have people drive on their own computer. So if you're teaching technology, don't just demonstrate on your computer, have the person on the other side also log in, share their screen with you, and now you can walk them through it, not just have them watch you do it. So another way we can help make sure that everything works well for you. That always goes by so fast, Lisa. So thank you for having us on this morning. I hope this gave everybody some cool tips and tricks, but good way to start the morning and get the coffee moving.
Thank you again for doing this, truly. And this is recorded, so Julie will be sending everyone the link to that. So not only can you get Katie's slides, you can actually hear her talk. So I really appreciate everyone coming this morning. Thank you so much. And look, it's after 8 o'clock.
I know. Great to see everyone.
Thanks so much.
Take
See
care.
everyone soon.
Bye-bye.
We appreciate you.
Bye.